Welcome everyone to Love and Beloved platform, and thank you so much for your continuing support and for following along. And guys, if this podcast has brought you value, please share and rate and subscribe because that's what help other people to discover it. And I hope this encourages and inspires you. And today we have an amazing guest. Michelle Jewsbury. And Michelle is transformational speaker and author and coach and advocate for a victim in domestic abuse. And she uses her nonprofit Unsilenced Voices to reach victims across the globe and hope and encouragement for overcoming the cycle of violence. And I actually met Michelle and I knew right away that she's extraordinary woman. And I had the privilege to actually contribute a chapter in Breaking of Silence, Voices of Survivors. And we will talk about this later. But welcome, Michelle, to Love and Beloved platform.
Yay, thank you so much. And hello to everybody out there. I'm super excited to be here.
That's awesome. Can you please share a little bit about your background and what has shaped you in the person you are today?
Yeah, so that's a heavy question, if you know what I mean. But let's take a journey back. Small child, I grew up in a small town in North Idaho called Sandpoint, Idaho, and my mom and my dad were the love story of the town. And we grew up in a lower middle class family. My daddy was military, and my mom worked in a restaurant. And my dad was stationed multiple places around the United States, so we would move around a lot. So my brother and I learned to make friends quickly and then have to unmake friends and then remake friends when we moved. But fast forward, I ended up graduating high school and decided that I wanted something even more with my life. That something even more when I was freshly 19 years old was to move to Hollywood, California and become a movie star. So I packed my bags and I drove all the way down to Hollywood, California. And I loved it. I loved the lights and the glamour and the glitz. And I started pursuing my career. I enrolled in theater classes and comedy classes, and I got an agent and managers and did all the things that I was supposed to do. I did a bunch of extra work, so I've been on set for 17 hours multiple days in a row because of that extra work. And my biggest claim to fame was I did a Papa Murphy's Pizza commercial. This was years back. This has got to be 2016 now. But I did a Papa Murphy's Pizza commercial way back when. And I thought that that was the biggest thing in the whole wide world. Well, in 2011, I was introduced to somebody who I thought was going to be maybe my Prince Charming. He was suave and he said all the right things and started courting me and sending me gifts and flowers. And I was hesitant because I was there to pursue acting, so I didn't want to start a relationship. Well, fast forward a little bit, a few months later, 2012 in January, he pursued me to start a relationship with him. And I finally said yes. And we began what I thought was going to be a very romantic time together. And lo and behold, about 4 months into that relationship, he had pushed me so hard against a wall that my head went through it. And I never grew up with domestic violence. I had no idea what I was facing. So when that happened to me, I remember stumbling forward and looking behind me and just thinking, "Oh, I got to patch this hole." I wasn't thinking I needed to run away. And I ended up staying with him for over 4 years. And during those 4 years, the violence escalated to beatings longer than 4 hours. I experienced all forms of domestic violence from physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, and financial abuse. Finally, I ended up escaping that situation in 2015, towards the end of 2015. And I began to document my story. And when I documented that story with my theater background, it first came out in a play format. So in 2016, I ended up writing and performing a 65-minute solo play about my experience in domestic violence. I also sued my abuser for what I had endured. When I performed the play, people came up to me and started telling me their stories, not just domestic violence, but of adversities and traumas that they faced. And I felt a calling from God to do something even more because it's not about what happens to us, it's about how we react to what happens to us. And it's up to us to use our stories to help and encourage other people along the way. So in 2017, I founded a nonprofit organization called Unsilenced Voices. My abuser and I settled out of court, and a large portion of that settlement I used to start the nonprofit. We began in West Africa. And why we started in West Africa was really a God thing. God had introduced me to some people in Sierra Leone and also in Rwanda and Ghana. And I just said yes. So we started in Ghana, expanded to Sierra Leone. That's where the bulk of our programming still exists to this day. We've done work in Rwanda and we've also done work in the United States. We published a curriculum for the US and other countries around the globe called Graced for Prosperity, helping individuals overcome the pain and trauma of what they've endured, but also giving them financial literacy and different techniques to overcome. In 2019, I began speaking and coaching. And along that journey, I started to realize that it's not about me. For the longest of times, I would get up on stage and I would talk about me, me, me. And when I started to realize that it was about helping other people and about helping them share their stories, not just about me, that's when doors really started to open. And that's when God granted me the opportunity to work with hundreds of people from Sierra Leone to the US to Canada, Europe, all over the globe. And we developed a couple of amazing programs. I developed a team, and one of which is our book collaboration called Breaking the Silence Voices of Survivors, where you have been a part of. So at the time of this recording, it's February of 2025. We're publishing volume 3 in October of 2025, and we'll be publishing volume 4 in 2026, so early 2026. I speak on a lot of stages, and then I also teach what's called Legacy Camp. Legacy Camp is a 12-week group coaching program to help people tell their stories through speaking on stages, creating courses and content, and then also writing your own book. So there's a lot there, and I'm sure we're going to
That's
dive.
awesome. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna be unpacking this. But first of all, I'm so grateful that you are wife and you using this to actually make other lives better, but you're healed and overcome as well. So I just commend you to this amazing bravery because there's trauma create this impact that actually we become silent. That's why when I was preparing for this interview, and I thought how amazing that you actually name your nonprofit Unsilence because trauma stops us to speaking because there's shame, guilt, condemnation. There's so much lies that we are believing and we truly becoming a victim on like a psychological level, not only physical. And that's what the abusers and traffickers actually use as the means to manipulate. But the fact that you keep saying the breaking the silence, I love this analogy as well. And um, what we heard the story, but what was that moment that really inspired you to share your personal story of overcoming domestic violence with the world?
When I started to document my story, I didn't realize why I was writing it out. And I was staying with my godfather at the time, and I was going through this emotional up and down roller coaster. If I missed my abuser, I wanted him back. I wanted things to be changed and different, and I was yelling at God, and I was very confused during that time. But I remember documenting the story, and friends of mine encouraged me to go to this acting studio where this young woman, her name is Jessica Lynn Johnson, she was directing people in solo theater. And I remember walking in there and my arms crossed and put my feet up on the chair. And I was just like, I'm here because my friends told me to come. I didn't want to be there. But when I was there, I felt, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is this is how God wants me to share my story. And from there, writing that solo play and performing that play was really where it dawned on me that this is much larger than me. And that's when, when people came up to me after performing, that's when I really knew, okay, God, what do you want me to do now? I'm just going to say yes. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no experience in any of this, but I'm just going to say yes. And I wrote my first book in 2019, and just kind of knew that my story was impactful.
Is the
But when
book called But I Love Him?
it is. The first book is called But I Love Him, exactly. And what's interesting is, like I said, I thought things were a lot about me in the beginning. So I would talk a lot about me. And when it finally dawned on me that it wasn't about me, this was in 2021, really, 2021, 2022 era, where I was like, oh, make this about other people. And that's when I knew.
That's amazing. Because I don't know, guys, like if you listen to my podcast and I was sharing my story, and I'm telling you, in those moments when I actually was hiding this truth for 20 years, I heard the women speaking from the stage about their experience. And that's literally what triggered me to open up, because I thought if she can do it, I can do it. So I hear exactly the same message from you, because you realizing, oh, it's not about me, it's for someone else. And it's for another woman who is going through that and thinking, wow, like if you have strength to overcome this, then I have hope as well. So you're detailing your journey of escaping abuse in your book, But I Love Him. What key lessons do you hope readers take away from your memoir?
So when I first wrote that, it was literally just me just divulging all of my information on the pages. It was more healing than anything. But when somebody picks up that book, I want them to know that domestic violence really can happen to anybody, and you'll see the progression of how the relationship began and concluded, and everything in between. I don't hold back in that book. Some people say it's too much. Some people are very excited about it. There's 8 billion people on the planet at this time. I'm not going to impress everybody. However, it's a true story. It is my true story. And when people pick it up, I want them to know, I'm being authentic, very transparent, and I am opening my soul in this book, talking about my childhood, talking about the abusive relationship. I even have my lawsuit in the book. So when people pick it up, I want them to know, if they're going through some type of abuse, if they've gone through domestic violence, trafficking, they can overcome, because I've been able to, and I am no better than anybody else. So if I can do it, you guys can do it too.
That is awesome. And you named this book, But I Love Him. And you mentioned you actually stayed with the same guy for 4 years going through this. Can you can you talk about this part, but I love him, but this is what's going on, is not okay. What make you stay that long and finally make the decision?
Yeah. So, a lot of people who have not gone through this type of trauma, they don't understand why victims stay. And the reason I wrote the book was to showcase, look, it's not all bad. So, one thing to remember is if there's 30 days in a month, 29 of those days can be beautiful and wonderful with your spouse or your significant other, throwing popcorn at each other, laughing, making love, just all of the fun stuff, going to dinner, flowers, the courtship, all of it. And then one day, he or she will just snap and attack you. And then it can go through another cycle of, I'm so sorry, let's walk on eggshells. And then there's some kind of big blow up, and then the apology stage again. And it just is this repetitive cycle. And you really believe that they're going to change, that what they say to you during that apology stage is going to change. So that was what was really kind of impactful, and and what I really wanted the readers to get.
Did you ever experience the doubt and fear if you walk away, what's gonna happen to you?
Oh
There
yeah.
was,
Oh yeah. So he was financially controlling my life. And during that time, I didn't have a job. He didn't want me working. It wasn't until towards the end of our relationship where I had left a few different times that I actually had a job. But in the beginning, he actually made me quit my job, and I was solely dependent on him financially.
Mhm,
He also maxed out my credit cards. So we added his name to my credit cards, but although I was the main credit card holder, it hit me in the end. So we had like $50,000 in debt on my credit cards. And then he had leased me a Lexus that I couldn't afford. So the financial struggle was what I was most concerned
mhm,
with. If I leave, what the heck is going to happen? And in reality, what happened was my credit did plummet for 7 years. I literally just got my credit scores back, I would say a year and a half ago, right? It took 7 years for this to fall off of my credit.
mhm,
And, I paid my car payment double every month leading up to when I left so that I had a vehicle when I left. But a lot of that was the financial component. The other part, of course, was the emotional component where I did love him and I know that he loved me. He just didn't know how to show it. And he had a lot of pain and a lot of trauma
mhm,
that he was unwilling to deal with and work with. And because of that, then he wouldn't be able to heal and the cycle would continue and
mhm.
repeat. So yes, there was a lot of fear in leaving. I ended up leaving 7 times, 8 times, and that's pretty normal in domestic violence relationships before I finally broke the chains.
Yes, thank you so much for clarifying that. And honestly, what come into my mind, guys, when you see this situation and you never been in anything like that, thanks God that, and I hope you never gonna experience like that, but please have grace and compassion for the people who is suffering. And if you want to help someone, you ask them, how can I help you? Rather than give it advice, tell them like what they should do and why they stay, because there's so much more involved than just the physical abuse. So we never know all story, and definitely people who hurt people have a trauma as well. So there's so much that we don't know. So we we pray and we do what we can. But definitely, if anybody can see the abuse, or they can somebody come to you for help, there's so many things that maybe like you, Michelle, can actually address that. If somebody asking for help, we even remember that sign about like even somebody not verbally asking you but showing the sign that they need help, what they can do, what we can do for them.
So, first off, if you recognize that there is either a child in trafficking or somebody involved in domestic violence, if you see something, say something. That's the biggest thing. We live in the 21st century where our police are supposed to have our back. And this isn't always consistent, and I understand that. However, if you do see something, call the authorities. I don't recommend stepping in because when you step in, you also can be hurt. However, I do know people who do. I'm one of those people that'll step in. However, I'm not recommending that. Okay. But definitely, if you see something, say something. Look out for the signs. If you're unsure what's happening, ask somebody. And if this woman maybe goes to the restroom, you could go to the restroom and ask her if she needs help. Just don't do it in front of the guy because that would cause even more trauma. And then encourage them, So I had a lot of friends during my abusive situation that ended up leaving me as friends
Mm,
because they told me advice. They said, "We don't trust him. We don't like him. It seems like he is hurting you. You need to leave." And I didn't leave. Okay, there's a lot of reasons why people stay. And so when I finally left, their doors were already shut. So,
Mm.
what I recommend as friends, as family members, don't ever shut your door on somebody who needs your help because it might take a couple of different times for them to finally break the chains and have the courage to leave.
Absolutely. That's what I was talking about family and friends, because it's heartbreaking to watch that and you cannot do anything about it. But when I do believe we intervene from our point of view, we can make a more mess than helping, because we don't know what's going on and how it's gonna work out. And but definitely, um, yeah, they see something, say something, because if there's to the point of the uh that can be like really bad, you need to intervene, not specifically get in between the people and stuff, but definitely go to authorities. And there's so many numbers, like I actually will put some numbers of the and human trafficking and domestic violence, some hotlines you can call, and they anonymous, so some of them you don't really even need to tell them like who you are, but just say the situation. So I think this is a little bit easier for us to get involved. And absolutely. Some no red flags as well. Would you like to speak in about the red flags about the
Yeah, we talk about.
domestic violence or even human trafficking as well?
Yeah, so I'll divulge into both a little bit, and I know you have a lot of experience in this as well. So with domestic violence, a lot of red flags. When you start a relationship and the other person wants to move the relationship too quickly, that's a red flag. If the person takes complete control. So for example, in my situation, my abuser didn't want me carrying a purse. He carried my ID all the time, and he would always order for me. At first, I thought it was sweet. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is kind of nice. But in reality, it was him just controlling my life. That control is the one thing to always look out for. They tend to try to isolate you very quickly. So even in my relationship, he had me move 3 hours away from my congregation, my friends, and isolated me where I was solely dependent on that person. Also, the quitting of your job, saying that you don't need a job, or doing the opposite, that they don't work and they just use your money and you have to give them money every single day. So that's a huge red flag as well, huge no-no. We live in a day where we have cell phones, guys. Okay. So look people up. Find out what friends, family members, social media say about them. We have technology at our fingertips. We might as well use it. And also talk to their friends, right? Find out who their friends are. I remember there was this one guy that Paul knew very, very well. And this guy said, "Hey, I wouldn't move in. I wouldn't date this guy. He's kind of a
Mm.
dick, right?" And I didn't listen. I didn't listen to what his friends told me. I decided to continue to pursue the relationship anyway because there was this fairy tale love that was painted. And all of those are red flags. There's a lot more red flags, but just look for those. Another, if you go out to a restaurant, the way they talk to the waiter or waitress, the way they treat other people, pay
Mhm.
attention to that. If they are not nice, don't stay with them. Okay, because that means they're not going to be nice to you. And then with trafficking, typically speaking, the young girls or young boys are more timid, right? It's usually older men, also some women who traffic as well, and the children look uncomfortable. And then, of course, I remember meeting a young girl in Las Vegas in a hotel bathroom, and she was getting ready for her night. And that night included, of course, working as a sex worker because that's what her pimp wanted her to do. And I just knew when I walked into the restroom how she was dressed, how she was acting. Um, she didn't want to do this type of work. She was being forced, and that's trafficking. And when you see that, I sat down and had a conversation with her. But when you see that, giving her some options, opportunities, understanding though that her pimp could be right around the corner or watching her. So just being very, very careful
Mhm.
as to not getting her caught because that could lead to really, really horrible repercussions for her. But helping her to get options. There's a lot of phone numbers now. There's a lot of organizations that can help and come in and really rescue, I would say, a lot of these young people from trafficking. And sometimes they go back in and they go back in because that's what they know. And it's okay. That's not their fault. Just giving them a different opportunity, showing them that there is another way. That's what we really need to do. And I
That's
know there's
awesome.
a lot on your story as well.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. And honestly, guys, if you're listening and this domestic violence and human trafficking, it's been such a huge topic, and sometimes it feels overwhelming, and sometimes you think, what can I do to help? There's so many resources. You can partner up, you can donate money, you can create awareness. You can honestly advocate against human trafficking and domestic violence. I'm so grateful for people like you, Michelle, that go and actually share these stories and creating impact in the world, because honestly, all of us can do something. And I want to ask you this question. So you started nonprofit Unsilenced Voices. So how does it support survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and human trafficking? And actually, what we can do to help you?
Awesome. Yeah. So Unsilenced Voices, our primary goal and focus is in Sierra Leone. So we have a program called Sponsor a Survivor that's actually called Matilda's program. It was named after our first young survivor of abuse. She came in, we put her through vocational training. She was a spitfire, a spunky, awesome, amazing girl. Teachers would text me all the time, or WhatsApp me, I should say, and be like, I can't handle Matilda because she just lived a different life. She lived a life on the streets and she was ready to take her personality and do something even bigger. So she would start advocating with our team on the streets against sexual abuse, against sex work, helping other women see that there's another way. And lo and behold, we found out that she was HIV positive and ended up passing away from AIDS. And we named the program after her. But we have roughly about 60 girls on a wait list for that program. It pays for vocational training, training materials, monthly stipend, counseling, and medical. We do savings box programs. We have roughly 1,600 people between two villages that we help and support, 16 to 1,800. And then that is through educational seminars, sensitizations. We do sex worker sensitizations, the agricultural programs. We built a cassava processing facility with the Fixers TV show on BYU back in 2024, and now our our the people, the village people that we help and we support, they are able to use the cassava processing facility to process cassava at almost like 400 times faster. So it takes 10 minutes versus like 2 or 3 weeks to be able to
Mm.
process this. So it helps with financial literacy. So we do a lot of financial literacy trainings. We partner with other organizations in the area. But the bulk of what we do is really helping survivors off the streets. And these survivors oftentimes are forced into sex work. They don't know what to do. Their husbands have left them with children, or they've been raped multiple times. There's a lot of sexual abuse that happens in Sierra Leone. Many of our girls also have been trafficked from other countries. So from Kenya, we see a lot of young girls in Sierra Leone. We're like, oh, where'd you come from? And they came from Kenya, and so we help them go through vocational training. And I just had a WhatsApp message from our team yesterday, and a young girl named Hawa who enrolled shortly after Matilda. She just started her own shop where she has her own storefront and she's sewing dresses and it's absolutely amazing to see that she has prospered from being a sex worker on the streets, and now she is an entrepreneur and owning her own business. So we help a lot with that.
That's amazing.
Thank you. It's awesome to see that. We've got many stories like that and we need help. I mean, it takes funding, yes, but we all have time, talent, or treasure. So choose one and give that. Whether it's your treasure, which is your money, your time, you can volunteer, you can help, you could spread awareness. Um, and then your talent. So we're currently looking for another board member, specifically in the legal area. We also need fundraisers. One of our board members is working real hard on getting us even more funding for Unsilenced Voices. Our biggest goal, next step in Sierra Leone, is to build a school with a housing component. A lot of our girls, although they're going through vocational training and they're no longer participating in sex work, still live in the brothels, and they keep getting reoccurring STIs because of the living conditions, not because of what they're doing. We need to get them out of there. So we need funding in order to do that. So we really need help. And you can go to unsilencedvoices.org to get more information on that.
Absolutely. That is great. I actually was thinking about the fact that we can get the girls off the street, but if you just give them a therapy and there's no future, then they end up the same place where they been before. You need to give them trade. You need to give them something different to how to make money. You need to give them new hope, new dreams, so they know where they go after, because what they do, default mode. And that's why we keep like going back over and over, because I've been there was nothing for me. So, and that's all I knew, so why wouldn't I? So when I learned the trade, and that actually totally changed my mindset and perspective. So guys, I will put everything um, on the show notes, so you can actually connect with Michelle about this as well. So, what practical tools and strategies do you actually, well, we little bit address this as well to, you know what? That's so funny. This is like I just answered this question after you answered this question. So we're gonna scrub this and actually move on to this one, because yes, I'm conscious about our time as well. So let's talk about breaking the silence, voices of survivors. So, how it shed light on experiences of the individuals that aspire other to heal and overcome the challenges. How really that moment came that you decided to create this anthology. That's the word, anthology. That's actually the word that I learned with you. And when did you decide to actually get the survivors together to share their story and create these powerful books?
Yeah, I mean, the first Breaking the Silence, I think, was released in January of 2024, right? And I think you were part of that. It was either January or February. Um, and I remember I had recently moved to Florida and I was just like, okay, how can I serve better? I just want to serve better. How can I help people even more? And what does that look like? And the best way for people to get even more exposure for their personal and or professional lives is by having a book. So I was like, if Chicken Soup for the Soul can go on and sell millions and millions of books and help a lot of people with all the stories within that book, we can create a nonfiction memoir type of anthology crafted with 20 plus stories of survivors of all types of ailments, where it can be a coffee table book. If somebody is thinking about suicide and they pick up this book and read a story and they said, oh my gosh, they were able to overcome, I think I can overcome too. If it's about sexual abuse or trafficking or domestic violence or drug addiction or grief, all of these stories are in this book, disease, you name it. And I just kind of it came to me. I mean, it's a God thing. It's all a God thing. This isn't anything that I've done on my own. Jesus has definitely been there, and is leading the way, I should say. And I'm just, humbly, at least doing my best, trying to follow it, and him. So, yeah, that's kind of how it came. And then I was like, okay, we're going to do this every year. And then I was also trying to think, how else can I serve? And that's where Legacy Camp came about.
That's awesome. And guys, honestly, she's so humble, but I'm telling you, I've been part of that process. It was amazing. It was like very well put together, very well thought out. It was like showing up all the time, the emails, the summits, the people were amazing, the lunch was amazing, the book went to bestseller, and I'm so grateful that I was part of this amazing experience. Are you doing another one? So volume four,
Three. So
three.
right now, so we published volume one, that was you, and we had the book launch party at the Oxford Exchange for volume one and hired a videographer and photographer, and we hit number one bestseller on Amazon. We published volume two in October of last year. That hit number one bestseller on Amazon again. We held our book launch party at the University Club in Tampa. So it was like the 50th or 60th floor. So you could see all of Tampa. It was awesome, beautiful. We had 11 of the authors come to that. We've been featured on Fox, Bay News 9, and ABC Action News twice. And then volume three, we're publishing in October of 2025. So this year, we have all the authors now for volume three. We're looking for four authors. So volume four is going to be published in 2026. But we're most likely going to go back to the Oxford Exchange for volume three for the book launch party. We'll definitely hit number one bestseller on Amazon again, and we will definitely pitch to be in even more media, because what this is it's exposure. We want the authors to get exposure for their mission, their message, their movement, their nonprofit, their business, whatever that looks like. So that's why this is such a great opportunity. And you have 20 other people promoting the book as well. So it's not just you, but 20 others. And it's very well put together. We've got in-house editing team and design team for the cover. So as you've said, it really is a cool process. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. I love teaching it. We have monthly meetings leading up to publication. So it's constant communication. And, if you have questions, anything like that, we're here. So.
That's awesome. About you here, where can people connect with you online?
Yeah, so you can go to michellejewsbury.com. Again, it's Michelle Jewsbury, JEWSBURY.com. If you want information about Unsilenced Voices and you live in the United States, you can text UV as in Unsilenced Voices to 26786. Again, it's UV to 26786. If you're not in the US and you're abroad, you can also go and visit unsilencedvoices.org.
That's awesome. And before I let you go, Michelle, I would like to ask you my signature question. What does love and to be loved means to you?
To love is to love unconditionally, to love despite aggressions or pain, trauma. We have family members that might upset us, friends that upset us, people who disappoint us, that we love them anyway. And we are there and we have their back. To be loved is a harder question, I think, because I think the mass majority of the people who are listening to your podcast and you and I, we have what's called empathy, and empathy will help us to love even harder. But to receive that love from others oftentimes can be very challenging and difficult. And that first starts with you. To receive love, you also have to love yourself. And I highly recommend that you do self care, that you learn that you are amazing inside and out. You're beautiful. And that's what it means to be loved, because only when you love yourself can you truly be loved by somebody else.
That's beautiful. Any final thoughts?
Last thought that I would like to share. I do this on most every podcast interview. there's a movie called Finding Nemo, and in the movie there's a fish. Her name is Dory, and she only has like a 10-second memory span. But the one thing she sings to herself all the time, despite the situation she gets in, is just
Just
keep.
keep swimming.
Yep. Yep, just keep swimming, just keep
Awesome.
swimming. So, if you're listening and you're going through hardship right now, just keep swimming. God can't steer a parked car, so make sure you're moving in a direction. Just keep going, and God will steer you in the right way.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being our guest today. You've provided so much insight and inspiration, and we truly appreciate you sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. And our special guest today was Michelle Jewsbury, and she's an inspirational speaker, an author, and coach, and advocate for victims of domestic abuse. She uses her nonprofit to reach victims across the globe and with hope and encouragement, overcoming this cycle of violence. And guys, do not hesitate to reach out to Michelle, look into her website, partner up, participate. Honestly, everyone, what is that my friend say? Everybody can help somebody. So
Yeah.
be that somebody. And I really like the phrase that you say, all of us have the talent, the gift. What is that phrase was?
Time, talent, and treasure.
Time, talent, and treasure. So you guys, like, you definitely have one of those or three of those. Or honestly, I know if God would move you, this is really great people to partner up with. So I will put the links on everything that we mentioned today in the show notes, and you can find this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform that you're listening on. And if you, like me, prefer to watch, I'm on YouTube as well, so you can check it out that as well. So stay tuned for another episode of Love and Beloved. And thank you so much for listening and your ongoing support. And thank you again, Michelle. I'm so grateful for you and your time.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, until next time, take care and be blessed and love and beloved.